and a belief in their faith. And even today, that small dabba with the earth, it is still there in my house. It is still there in my ancestral house. It is still there in the puja room. And every time I look at that, I just feel overwhelmed. Because I have that link. I have the link of this civilization simply because at that point of time, somebody made a choice that I will not succumb, that I will stand up, that I will fight. When the Portuguese came to Goa, they came to Goa in about 1510, a lot of years before the British actually. How many of you know that Goa was under Portuguese rule? Or did you all think that Goa was under British rule? How many of you have been to Goa? Okay, tell me the 3 words that come to your mind when I say Goa. Okay, Feni, churches, Christianity, fun. I'm surprised nobody said girls. You guys are very polite. Pardon me? Even now, people can become Portuguese citizens, but that's besides the point. Yes. Anybody whose parents were born before 1961, they can apply for Portuguese citizenship, which is why you'll find a lot of Goans taking Portuguese citizenship and ending in Britain. But that's not the point. But do you know how much percentage of Goan population do you think is Hindu? Okay, not people who know. How I'm asking the rest of the people. You think 20% people are Hindus? 10%. Okay, actually 65% of Goans are Hindus. Did you know that? And 28% are Christians. But the images that you have of Goa, you see in the tourism brochures, you'll see that in movies, you'll always find this one golden-hearted Goan drunk Christian auntie or uncle or whatever who is always singing songs and getting drunk on Feni and, being nice to everybody. And he's always Di Costa or Di Lima or whatever. But the point is, when the Portuguese came to Goa in 1510, they fought against that time Goa was controlled by Adil Khan, who was a Sardar of the Adil Shahi kingdom of Bijapur. So when the Portuguese defeated them and they took over Goa, it was a very small part of Goa that they took over. They took over the city of today's Old Goa, what is known as Old Goa today. And then by 1540, they had taken over 3 more districts. The districts of Salsette, which is the coastal belt basically, Bardes and Tiswadi, which is about 10% of today's Goa. If you look at the Goa map today, only 10% of today's Goa was taken over by the Portuguese by 1540. And that is where most conversions took place. Because at that point of time, Portugal was very rabidly Catholic. And the Pope had given them a decree saying that the Pope had very conveniently divided the world into one half given to Spain and one half given to Portugal. And basically told them that it is not, and see the words carefully, that it is not just the right of the Portuguese government, but it is the responsibility of the Portuguese government to convert the people in the colonies to Christianity. It was their holy religious duty. They had to do it. It was not just the right. So when the Portuguese came to Goa, and by 1540 they had these 3 districts under their rule, they basically got Jesuits over, and the Jesuits were very powerful, fanatical Christian priests who were given the job of converting people to Christianity. And the Portuguese king at that point of time was totally under the control of Jesuits. So they issued decree after decree, which basically was so discriminatory towards Hindus that Hindus were either forced to convert to Christianity, and by doing simple things like for a long time, the Jesuit priests would take the Portuguese soldiers and they would go to Hindu houses and they would just grab whomever they could find and they would stuff a piece of beef or a piece of bread in the mouths of those people. Like the soldiers would hold on to them. And after that, they would say, okay, now you've eaten beef, now you've eaten bread, now you're no longer a Hindu, you already become a Christian, and you don't have a choice. And our society was also so orthodox at that point of time that even the Hindu society wouldn't take such a person back. There was no concept of prayaschitta. There was no concept of, okay, I'm really sorry, it was not my fault. Somebody comes to my house and stuffs a piece of beef inside my mouth. That's not my fault really, right? But at that point of time, people were so orthodox and so caught up in their notions of purity and impurity that they wouldn't accept people back into the religion. And if one person becomes a Christian, if the husband becomes a Christian, what do you think the family will become? They too will feel that, okay, I need to be with that person, right? So even the whole family would become Christian. Then they started more discriminatory rules, like any child who had lost his father. And remember, in those times, life expectancy was very low. People would die at the age of 35, 36, 40. So children who would lose their fathers, they would be taken over forcibly by the Portuguese and they would be sent to seminaries where they would be converted. And they didn't have a choice. And when a child of 5 or 6 gets converted forcibly, what do you think the mother will do? Because the mother's dharma at that point of time is to be with the child. And if the mother converts, other children will also convert. If other children convert, then old grandparents will also convert. Like that, they converted entire villages. Francis Xavier. How many of you have been to the Church of Born Jesus in Goa and seen the mummy of Francis Xavier? Have you gone and prayed there? No. Lit candles? Okay. So Xavier, when he came to Goa, he was the most prolific missionary, proselytizer of Goa. And I'm going to read you out some of his quotes, okay? These are direct quotes which are taken from his letters. And this is the guy they worship as saint. Not just Christians, Hindus too. Whenever I hear of any act of idolatrous worship, I go to the place with a large band of these children. These children meaning converted children. The children run at the idols, upset them, dash them down, break them to pieces, spit at them, trample on them, kick them about, and in short, heap on them every possible outrage. The Letters and Instructions of Francis Xavier, page 153. Indians, being black themselves, consider their own color the best. They believe that their gods are black. The great majority of their idols are as black can be, and seem to be as dirty as they are ugly and horrible to look at. The Letters and Instructions of Francis Xavier, page 160. When all are baptized, I order all the temples of their false gods to be destroyed and all the idols to be broken in pieces. I can give you no idea of the joy I feel in seeing this done, witnessing the destruction of the idols by the very people who but lately adored them. The Letters and Instructions of Francis Xavier, page 281. This man is today revered as Goinzo Sahib, patron saint of Goa. His body lies in Goa, and all the people who queue up to take his darshan, guess how many are Hindus, both Goan as well as tourists? Not 100%, a huge majority, like 50-60%. They don't know, and they don't want to know. That is the thing. Not knowing is not a crime. Ignorance is not a crime. But staying in a state of denial because you don't want to handle the uncomfortable truth, that is the crime. If you start telling them, then they would ask you, but why are you raking up the past? So when I decided to talk about Goa Inquisition, the first comment when I announced that I'm going to give a talk on Goa Inquisition in Delhi on such and such a date, the first comment on my Facebook page was by a Goan Hindu. And do you know what he said? He said, why are you raking up the past? Because it is not the past. The same choice, the same exact choice in the same exact words. You have so many days to either convert or get killed or leave was given to his people. And when in the 1990s. It's the same thing that happened to my family and my ancestors in Goa in the 16th century, happened to his family and his people in Kashmir in the 1990s. And even as we speak, it is happening in Bengal. Even as I speak, it's happening in Kerala. Even as I speak, it's happening in Tamil Nadu. If you drive in Kerala today from Kunur, okay, now today, right now there is no road actually, it's all water. But if you drive from Kunur to Kochi, to coastal areas, all along the highway, huge amount of property has been taken over, and there are new churches being built, really huge, clean, new, spanking churches. And most of them are by the evangelical sects, the Pentecostals, the Methodists, the Baptists, not the traditional Syrian Christians. So imagine you are an alien, you've come from Mars, and you're driving on that road. And all along the road, you will see only churches. You don't see a single temple, you don't see a single mosque. Who do you think lives there? Who would you think lives there? That is the whole point. And that is being done deliberately. It's a show of power. But we don't realize it because we don't learn any lessons, because we don't learn any lessons from the history. We have become so comatose, and we've become like that frog which is being boiled in water, that when you increase the temperature of water slowly by a degree each time, the frog at first doesn't feel the heat. And by the time he really starts feeling the heat, by the time the water is really boiled, it is too late for the frog to react and the frog is dead. That is what is happening to the Hindus. That is, to that extent, we are colonized. So anyway, get back to the Goa story. So that's how they converted a lot of people to Christianity. They used both the stick as well as the carrot. The stick was the Hindus were penalized. The Hindus could not employ Christians. There were villages which had the Gramasabhas, which had the traditional members of the Gramasabha from that village. That Gramasabha was responsible for making all the decisions in that village. But in a village where there were converted Christians and Hindus, the Hindus were not allowed to enter the Gramasabha. So basically, they could not make any decision in the village. So they were excluded from all economic decision making. So they made it more and more difficult for Hindus to remain Hindus on one hand, and on the other hand, they made it much easier to convert to Christianity by giving economic benefits, by giving physical benefits, like people would get free land, they would get, women at that point of time didn't have any share in their ancestral property, but if a woman converted to Christianity, she would get not only her father's property, she would also get her husband's property. And even if the husband refused to convert, she would still get her property, she would still get his property. So that they tried to do. Then Hindus were not allowed to ride horses in Portuguese areas or ride in a palanquin, even if they were rich or whatever. Only Christians had the right. Hindus were not allowed to marry in Portuguese areas, so they had to actually cross the river and go to the other side and get married. Hindus were not allowed to cremate their dead in Portuguese areas. So for a long time, people used to put their dead on rafts and set the rafts aloft in the river, and they would cremate their dead in the river. So like this,